Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, don't think I am worth the money. Kiss your income goodbye. After that, I got my ex-GF excluded from the work environment because she badmouthed me after we broke up. Finally, took revenge on my son. Before we get into today's episode, remember to subscribe so you never miss another of our videos. Don't think I am worth the money. Kiss your income goodbye. So I was living in a town where there was an old hotel that was in the process of being converted to apartments. Ended up moving in and at some point started to help the owner, let's call him Steve, out with a lot of stuff. Started with little odd jobs here and there, helping tear out a wall or take debris out. No big deal, really, made a few extra bucks. Being a geek, it didn't take long to start ending up helping handle some other stuff. They had internet access available, but it was using HPNA, so basically in-home DSL over lines in a 50-year-old building. They slowly were adding more people here and there, so adding more capacity ended up being my job, as well as handling the installs and troubleshooting. Building had its own cable system as well, and it had issues with some stuff overheating. Came up with a design that would simplify the build out somewhat and remove the issue of overheating boxes, as well as adding more room for channels to be added and creating a type of scrolling TV guide channel using Titan TV and an auto scroll plugin in the browser, then piping it onto a channel and adding some music. Before long I was handling most of the maintenance for all the apartments, internet, cable, lockouts and whatever else might be needed. Then Steve's stepdaughter moved in and things started to happen that were fishy, my information being removed as the lockout number among other things. So I gracefully moved on and got out of the way, as I didn't want to be in the middle of family. I also had no hard feelings for Steve over what the daughter or her husband was doing. I still got calls with questions and would answer them here and there. About 6 months after moving out, I got a call that Steve needed help as the boiler system was acting up and basically the building did not have heat. I went down and helped get things tore apart since the daughter's husband couldn't be bothered. He moved out of the house because he didn't want to take care of things, even though the wife did most of it. Ended up the fins on the boiler had clogged up with soot during startups over a few years. We cleaned it all out and got it up and running, disaster averted. Owner had another project he wanted some help with, so rather than turn down some extra cash, I figured why not. We ran a small water line from the top of multiple plumbing shafts to the basement so that a set of valves could be put into place so the recirculation pump would be able to evenly get water through the lines and everyone would have instant hot water. Ended up moving back to the area a couple months later as I started helping Steve with an even larger building nearby. The old hotel, converted to apartments, was 10 stories tall, so not small, but didn't need a lot done most of the time. The new place was not as tall but was larger and more spread out. One section had 3 floors and the whole thing sat on something nearly the size of a city block. I think total square footage was around 50k inside. I was taking care of the apartment maintenance needs and a few other things again, as well as staying in the building with my wife, who was acting as a lookout in the evenings. During the day I would help out with whatever was going on. We literally reworked a lot of structural steel, reclad one section of the building with corrugated steel sheets, extended one section of the building and poured concrete floors and retaining walls. I started having issues here and there with getting overheated during the day, heat stroke, and while I was living there I had not actually moved yet, so ended up taking a week to put most of our things in storage. We were literally living at the building in an RV. I had to keep the building secure. When I got back, Steve started complaining that the power for the building was $100 and blamed it on me running an air conditioner. We had been running a 220 welder on average 4 hours a day 5 days a week, but it had to be the AC unit, and basically said there was no way I could keep an eye on things if it was running because I couldn't hear anything. It had been over a month straight with highs over 100 degrees, but with another roof over my RV it never got direct heat, so I called BS, as my 2-bedroom apartment I just vacated only had electric costs around $120 per month, and it was all electric with a lot more items using power, including my aquarium. A question was then made about what I thought I was worth. I figured 10.00 per hour. I dealt with a lot, including maintenance on all the machinery and his vehicle, and never charged for fuel or mileage when I would drive my own vehicle to do things. For as long as I worked for the guy, I always had to bid my jobs outside of maintenance work. I was only receiving a flat amount of money each month for the work in the building, and my wife received nothing for keeping an eye out, which she did pretty well of since I actually caught a teenage kid in the building with her seeing them. Steve stated that no one was worth 10.00 per hour to him. Other things were being thrown out as my fault too. Basically Steve was under the gun on a couple things, as when he bought the building it was actually scheduled to be torn down, and another building across the road which was also scheduled to be torn down was bought slightly after he purchased his, yet it had already been completely rehabilitated and was opening up space for lease. The other building was smaller but had quite a bit more to have done to get it up to code. The roof was completely gone and the inside was so full of trash it took nearly a month to clean it out. Steve kept changing things after something was done and then turning around and changing them again, wasting more and more time. A lot of other things were going on as well, so I opted to be done and move on again, this time with no option of going back. My wife's health had started going downhill anyway, so being blamed for petty crap wasn't worth it, and I obviously was not wanted around anymore. Now here is the revenge. I had told him multiple times that there was an issue with his fire alarm panel not charging the batteries. The local fire department had been on him once before and forced more smoke detectors to be installed as a retrofit and a few other things. The smoke detectors were installed but the battery charging issue was never fixed properly. Other things in the building had also started to fall into disrepair that I had told him needed to be dealt with. For instance, some very large windows were cracked and a few had pieces broken with tenants in them. It was a two-man job to fix the windows and Steve had too many irons in the fire. He had sunk over $500K into the new building and either couldn't afford to have someone else do the work or didn't think it was worthwhile, so he kept putting it off. I went ahead and contacted the city about issues that needed to be addressed, as well as dropped some complaints about things. I used multiple email addresses from accounts I set up for exactly that purpose so it would never track back to me, and contacted multiple members of the city council as well as the fire chief marshal. I never contacted Steve again, but the last time I was there the apartment building was shut down with signs stating that it could not be occupied. Since the fire alarm panel had been written up on once before due to issues, and he had been told that if it became a problem again a sprinkler system would be required to bring the building up to code with it acting up again, the fire marshal shut it all down. The new building is now off the demolition list, but it once again sits empty as there is likely not enough money left to pull from the apartment building to make it complete. You see, being off the list only required it to be warehouse grade, which is basic lighting, emergency lighting, mostly airtight, with egress and fire systems. Once that was done, more work would be needed to actually start using the structure for office space and things of that nature. Going from 100 apartments to 23 with a few rent houses that needed work likely took the last little bit of money he had free to do things. The apartment building was truly unsafe, as if the power went out the fire alarm panel would not function, and with a tall building a fire on a lower floor would lead to pure disaster. All he had to do was fix it so the batteries were charged and would stay that way, and pay someone to work on the panel if it was acting up. But then again, no one was worth $10 an hour. Why would he pay someone who is going to make even more than that? I felt bad for most of the people who lived there since they lost their home, but I would have felt worse if they were hurt or worse in a fire. The one thing I wish I had seen was the stepdaughter and her husband's faces while they had to move. They were on the top floor, as well as Steve's and his wife's face when the building was basically condemned. But I still go back and look at the news article showing it was all shut down and have a little smile. It just doesn't pay to be a jerk when someone has tried to help you out. I got my ex-GF excluded from the work environment because she badmouthed me after we broke up. When I started my first job while studying for a degree, I met this woman who is a B-word. We started to hit into each other and everything went well. She had an abusive BF and then they broke up, so we started dating. That dating time was like one day lol. We finished the training phase, so we started working attention calls for a shitty internet company. The work was stressful to a Mexican sales support because customers and reps treated us like shit. Enough background, let's jump into the story. After we broke up for some stupid reason she made up, I forgot why, she started to say that I was abusive, even that I forced myself into her. The thing is that people and me started to get all annoyed at her behavior because everyone knew how nice I was with the customers, managers and other people in my work environment. Well, she continued to throw shit at me, so we all decided to record the conversations and messages trying to destroy my reputation. We ended gathering like 100 messages and even got her recorded being the good person she was against me. After a few weeks of gathering info, I went to HR to give my evidence against her because the rumors spread even to HR and they were trying to fire me. I delivered the information and one by one of my co-workers started to being called to give their statements. It took like 1 hour until every single one of my co-workers were called in. She got called, I got a big apology from HR for being targeted in a hostile environment, and she was fired right away. The thing is that she also needed the money for school, and HR would not give her a recommendation letter from the company. She dropped out of school and now working at a supermarket that, even if it is a lot of miles from where I usually bought my stuff, I still use it as my location to buy groceries, and I went at the same hour she works at the same register. I just smile and say, "How is school?" and then leave. It is not that great of a revenge story, but thank God people backed me up in the revenge. B, if you are reading this, see you on Sunday at the supermarket. Took revenge on my son. English is not my native language. I am a Latvian. I, 36 male, have finally mustered the courage to take action against my son, 18 male. A little bit of backstory: me and the wife, 24 female, my son's stepmom, have gone through a bit of a cold stretch recently and are trying to work on our relationship, and of course that included working on our sex life. However, a few months ago my son decided to move back in with me after he lost his job and apartment due to corona. And ever since then he's been driving me crazy, saying that me and his stepmom are too loud when we have sex, even though I have done everything I can to make it quieter. I've tried to keep it down but to no avail, and trying to negotiate with him hasn't achieved anything. It got worse when he started blasting music whenever I tried to get intimate with the wife, and it drove me crazy. To give some context, my wife is my second wife and my lover for a few years, and my son's mother, who was my high school sweetheart, died of a car crash 2 years ago unfortunately. I suspect my son is only doing this because he is seething and hate my wife because he has made it clear that he wants me to choose between them before. Today me and the wife finally came to the conclusion that we must do something. We called my son but he refused to negotiate, so we told him he's out of the house. It turned to a screaming match, but with 2 of us he couldn't do anything. He left home today and I finally got relief after months of pain and frustration. I love him but can't let him get in the way of my relationship anymore. He is not a tweaker and my dad kicked me out younger. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next one.